Hey there everyone. AJ back again for the Mighty Glue Stick channel. I make videos about Dungeons & Dragons lore full-time and have a collection of hundreds of monster ecology and strategy videos on my channel. Over 300. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing as I upload at least twice a week. Taking advantage of the ability of elementals to exist without any of the usual needs of biological creatures, the water weird is essentially a trapped, lesser water elemental that is strong enough to rear out of its pool it's kept in, but not strong enough to survive outside of it. Basically, it is the perfect aquatic trap creature to serve as a hidden guardian. Summoning these creatures from the elemental planes is ancient knowledge, not that well understood, but emulated and copied over many thousands of years by various mages, clerics, and other spellcasters, inscribing a host of summoning rituals that all result in the same desired outcome. At first glance, the water weird is not a complicated entity, but when we look at a wondrous magical item called the Weird Tank, things get way more interesting, but more on that in a minute. As you travel back through the Dungeons & Dragons editions, it gets a little confusing, as Elemental Weird in 3rd edition was an attractive female humanoid oracle composed of the same element contained in some form of a pool. But they were not just water weirds, these were also air, earth, fire, ice, and snow weirds. Also, it's entirely possible for a mage to summon a necromental, which is essentially an undead version of another form of elemental. In the case of a necromental water weird, it looks like noxious stagnant water that something's died in a while ago and is absolutely evil. Your standard water weird for 5th edition requires a pool of water no less than 8 cubic feet. There are many exceptions to this though. The water doesn't have to be static, it can be flowing around a circuitous water feature. It may be a pool located along a flow of water, such as under a waterfall, or a murky stream located in a sewer. The spark of elemental energy that is the true form of the water weird can survive magical containment in a much smaller receptacle, such as a gem of elemental summoning, which merely needs to be crushed to release its into a sufficient pool of water for it to form a physical shape. It is difficult to convey how alien this life form is. To a creature from the prime material plane, it really doesn't make any sense. We'll give it a go. When we look at the uncommon wondrous item called the Weird Tank, there are many questions to answer. So this is a glass cylinder with a sculpted bronze base and a hinged and latchable lid that is strapped to the back of its owner. The tank has an armor class of 15 and 50 hit points, vulnerability to bludgeoning damage, and immunity to poison and psychic damage. The person using it needs to telepathically attune to the item, which forms a mental link between them and the intellect of the water weird inside the container. This entity is intelligent, but other than reacting to its environment and the commands of its owner, has nothing really going on in its mind. It's not interested in the past or the future. It has memory of what it has experienced, but it doesn't have an ego, no sense of self. It just exists and moves when told to do so. It doesn't get tired, it doesn't get bored, it doesn't chat with its owner, it has no desires, no dreams, no interests at all. It is 10 gallons of sentient water. Using an action to open the lid, the water weird will rise out of the tank like a liquid serpent and will act as telepathically directed by its owner immediately after the owner in the initiative order. It can never leave the containment tank, not even if it's poured into a sufficiently large pool of water, as it's sustained by the elemental energy infused in the container itself, not just the liquid inside it. Commanding it requires no additional action expenditure by the owner. It's purely mental and doesn't count as concentration, which is nice. At any time, the owner can command the weird to plop back into the container completely and can just snap the lid closed, sealing it up. If the water weird is killed, the tank loses its magical containment property until it expends at least 24 hours inside an elemental water node. When the tank is recharged, the new water weird forms inside it. Now this raises the interesting question, such as this is not really summoning an existing creature from the elemental plane of water. This is just the spontaneous forming of a sentient entity out of raw elemental energy, and that, my friends, is why elemental planes are so damn bizarre to creatures of the prime material plane. Life in the prime-material universe is housed in matter. It is a tenuous containment, really, always on the verge of flying off the rails. At least from the perspective of an elemental being, prime-material entities seem like the most unlikely and precarious mashup of pure order and pure chaos. We don't work without precisely balanced chemical reactions, and yet it is an open and consumptive system, constantly requiring all sorts of input and output, food, air, heat, light, interactivity with other entities. It is a mystery to them how we work at all, and stuff like ecosystems is just crazy talk, way too complex to be believed without directly observing, and only the most powerful elementals have the capacity to really understand half of what they see in the prime-material worlds with organic life. They are self-contained, they're self-organized, they make a physical form when they require one, and they all share the same material medium for their existence. The complexity of their ecology is invisible to prime-material beings. It's like trying to study the ecology of daydreams in a crowd of people. So it is more accurate to say that the weird tank needs to be put into an incursion of elemental affiliated life force, and that the power of the elemental planes is that the entire infinite plane of elemental water is actually alive. Killing a water weird is just disrupting that vital energy so severely that it no longer self-organizes enough to function as a physical form anymore. It becomes incoherent and dissipates into the wider environment. That's about as close to the general ecology of elemental creatures as you're going to get, really. So the water weird is bound energy form that can create a body out of water in its pool. This body has an armor class of 13, as it's quite agile and can move around to avoid being hit. It never leaves its pool, but can reach up to 10 feet beyond it, and within the body of water, the entity can swim at a speed of 60 feet. The energy form is basically moving through the water. As the pool can be much larger than the weird itself, I'm not sure that the weird can function that well in a really massive body of water, but if you wish to include them as a possible encounter in lakes, rivers and such, there's no laws against it. They have 9d10 plus 9, or between 18 and 99, with an average of 58 hit points. They can take half damage from non-magical fire, non-magical bludgeoning, slashing and piercing attacks. They're totally immune to poison, but take normal damage from cold, lightning and thunder attacks, which seems a bit unlikely. However, that energy that animates them cannot function or remain cohesive when the water is solid, ice form. And the disruption of sonic blasts and strong electrical currents also harms that vital energy form. They manifest as a serpentine form because it's the most functional one, and are plus 5 to hit any target up to 10 feet from the edge of the pool, doing 3d6 plus 3 bludgeoning damage, and if the target is medium or smaller, the water weird can coil around it and grapple it, with an escape DC of 13, immediately pulling the target 5 feet closer to the water. While grappled, the target is restrained, and the water weird will attempt to keep crushing it each round, as well as pulling it under the water to drown it. Thankfully, the water weird can't grapple multiple targets at once. However, it's very hard to tell if one is fighting a group of water weirds until they rise out of the water as multiple serpentine forms, as while they are moving around beneath the surface, they're basically completely invisible. They don't actually have the ability to see the outside world beyond the water. They just sense vibrations within 30 feet and have a passive perception of 10, reacting to any disturbance they can feel around them. Their elemental nature means that they're immune to exhaustion, paralysis, being knocked unconscious or prone, poisoned, grappled, knocked to the ground, or restrained. One major vulnerability they have, if they are contained in a fountain or a raised pool, is that the container can be broken, releasing the water and dooming them to be killed as the water flows out and dissipates their elemental energy. The water weird doesn't have to rear up out of the water to attack. Anything that makes contact with the water or steps into it can be grabbed, and with a strength of 17, the water weird is likely to keep something or someone from getting away from that water. It might wait for someone to try refilling a water skin and just grab their arm, hauling them into the pool suddenly, confusing the rest of the party as to what just happened. They might squirt or spray a gout of water to extinguish a lit torch, taking advantage of the ability to sense vibrations in total darkness. And of course, the flickering and the heat of a fire. There is mentioned in the monster manual that water weirds, though of a disinterested neutral alignment, may be influenced by the environment they're kept in with corrupted water causing them to become neutral evil, and pure or holy water causing them to behave more neutral good. This is entirely optional and really has a kind of a limited application, since they can't speak and only understand either telepathy or the Aquan language, and they don't bother to really know things. They can just repeat what they've seen and things they've done. They don't sleep, so they can observe an area near the water at all times, but their senses are limited to 30-foot blindsight and whatever sounds they pick up. They could tell you a humanoid walked past the fountain recently, but have no idea how to be more specific, except relaying what sound it made. The being could have been wearing a bright red clothing. The water weird would have no way of knowing that. They might be able to relate any spoken sounds they've heard. Even if they don't understand the language, they can telepathically play back the sounds they've heard with surprising accuracy. The monster manual says a neutral good water weird tries to frighten away interlopers rather than kill them, while a neutral evil water weird kills its victims for pleasure and might turn against its summoner. A water weird loses its evil alignment if its waters are cleansed with a purify food and water spell. They may have an intelligence of 11, wisdom and charisma of 10, but they don't really think like prime-material creatures. They are impossible to train. One can either command them to do something or not, otherwise they just sit around passive. Personally, I would say these are one of the best trap monsters for water features in the game. They combine quite well with a ravenous school of quipperfish or a large water python snake. I tend to put them pond in an area that has something else much more distracting in it, such as a planar portal, and thematically water is often associated with the passages between worlds. For example, the river Styx and the river Oceanus, and if you've ever watched the Constantine movie, water plays an important part in the rituals to transition to the outer planes as well. Fun and simple creatures lend themselves very well to being a good base template for a challenge rating 3 guardian type monster. Please hit the like button if you've made it this far, subscribe if you like what I do, check out my Patreon for some exclusive content and all the full scripts of these videos, buy some merchandise, wear your geek with pride, check out Patron Blades for a mighty smooth shave, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon.